"You're the most intelligent woman in this room," the billionaire said, his eyes holding hers. "And trust me, I've talked to everyone." Eliza Hayes froze, her passionate plea for literacy funding dying on her lips. She had been speaking to a skeptical donor, trying to ignore the sea of old money and new tech wealth that filled the grand New York City ballroom. She was used to feeling out of place at these lavish charity galas, armed only with her Columbia MBA and a belief in her nonprofit's mission. She saw the glances from the other high society women, that familiar mix of curiosity and dismissal that served as a silent reminder of her different world. But this man, Marcus Thorne, the tech mogul whose face graced magazine covers, wasn't looking at her like that. He hadn't even bothered with small talk. He had walked directly up, cutting off the unconvinced donor, and his attention was total. He didn't ask about the champagne or the orchestra. He asked about her strategy. "Your scalability," he pressed. "What's the 5-year plan for measurable impact?" Surprised but invigorated, Eliza met his directness with her own. She spoke of her data, her community-first approach, the structural issues her program addressed. She forgot the glittering room, the condescending stares. He wasn't just looking at her, he was listening. For the first time, she felt truly seen. The connection was immediate, palpable, and entirely intellectual. A slow, genuine smile spread across Marcus's face. "Brilliant," he said, turning to the donor who now looked rapt. "She's brilliant." For the rest of the evening, he introduced her not as a guest, but as a visionary, effortlessly securing her funding for the entire year. The courtship had begun, though she didn't even realize it yet. As the gala wound down and the crowd thinned, Marcus found her near the coat check. "Dinner," he stated, more of a fact than a question. He didn't ask for her number. He pressed a heavy, linen-finished card into her palm, his private number. "I never do this," he said, his voice softer now. "Call me tomorrow." Eliza watched him leave, his business card feeling heavy in her hand, wondering if this fairy tale moment is real or just a beautiful illusion. Marcus recognized Eliza's brilliance in that room, and if you recognize the value in this story, we'd love to know you're here with us. If you're still watching, please comment with the number 8 below just to let us know you've made it this far. We are dedicated to telling powerful stories just like this one right here on Black Brilliance. To make sure you don't miss what happens next in Eliza's journey, we invite you to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Your support helps us continue to find and create inspiring content just for you. Now let's continue. The wedding was a spectacular affair, with enough flowers to fill a forest. But as Eliza stood at the altar, she saw the polite, cold smiles of Marcus's family. She tried to focus on Marcus, remembering the intoxicating confidence from the gala, the man who saw her brilliance. But the wall of Thorne family standards was impossible to ignore. Her own family, her mother who cleaned houses, her father who worked double shifts at the factory, looked small and out of place in the front row, targets of condescending glances. At the reception, Eliza overheard one of Marcus's aunts refer to her as Marcus's little project, a comment that stung more than any open insult. A year later, at a tense Thanksgiving dinner at the Thorne family estate, little had changed. The sprawling upstate New York home felt cold despite the roaring fireplaces. When Eliza's mother, bless her heart, mentioned her own satisfaction in her cleaning work, Marcus's mother, Beatrice Thorne, smiled thinly. "How industrious," Beatrice said, the word dripping with condescension. "We must find you something more suitable." Later that evening, Eliza tried to discuss her plans to expand the nonprofit. Before she could finish, Marcus cut her off gently, pulling her close. "You don't need to work so hard anymore, baby," he murmured. "You're married to me now. Let me take care of you." It sounded romantic, but the words felt like a silk-lined cage. Just before dessert, Beatrice cornered Eliza in the hallway, guiding her toward the family portrait gallery. The walls were covered with generations of stern, pale faces. "The Thorne legacy, Eliza," Beatrice said, her voice quiet but firm as she gestured to the portraits of Thorne heirs. "It is everything. It must be protected." The implication hung heavy in the air. That night, Eliza tells Marcus she felt uncomfortable. He sighs, "You're just being sensitive. That's just how they are. Don't read too much into it." The company's hostile takeover attempt wasn't the only threat to Marcus's empire. The other threat was blonde, 25, and named Chloe Van Doren. Marcus had become a ghost in their penthouse, citing 18-hour workdays and the stress of the takeover battle. The man who used to debate social justice with Eliza now barely spoke to her about anything other than schedules. Eliza felt the shift, a cold distance that had nothing to do with work. She remembered Beatrice Thorne's chilling words about protecting the legacy and wondered if this was part of it. The isolation was a physical ache. The company Christmas party confirmed her fears. It was a lavish affair, but Eliza felt invisible. She watched Marcus's eyes linger on Chloe Van Doren, a young woman from his family's social circle. He brought Chloe into his inner circle of executives, asking her opinion on business matters while Eliza stood awkwardly by his side, ignored. Later, Eliza saw Beatrice Thorne laughing warmly with Chloe, a genuine warmth Eliza herself had never received. The next week, Eliza found a receipt from Tiffany's for a diamond tennis bracelet. It wasn't her Christmas gift. When she confronted Marcus, he dismissed it coolly as a corporate gift for a client's wife. But days later, cleaning out his suit jacket before sending it to the cleaners, she found another receipt, a charge for a hotel suite for 2 nights he had claimed to be working late at the office. She confronted him that evening, her hands shaking as she held out the receipts. She was prepared for denial, for apologies. She was not prepared for his cold indifference. Marcus didn't even look ashamed. He simply straightened his tie, his gaze flat and impatient. "You're being dramatic," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Madison Chloe is a family friend. If you can't handle the social requirements and the pressure of my life, maybe you should think about whether this marriage is really for you." The gaslighting was masterful, twisting her valid concerns into a failing on her part. Eliza looks at the man she loves, who is now a stranger, and realizes with chilling certainty, he's not just cheating on me. He wants me gone. That is a devastating realization. If you are still watching and you value Eliza's journey, even through this painful betrayal, please comment with the number 8 below to let us know you are here with her in this moment. This is Black Brilliance, and if you haven't subscribed yet, we highly recommend you do so and turn on that notification bell, because you will not want to miss the chapter that comes next. Your support helps us continue to create these powerful stories that inform and inspire. Now, let's continue. Believing she could still save her marriage, Eliza decided to surprise Marcus with his favorite lunch. She didn't know she was walking into her own execution. She still clung to the memory of the man from the gala, the man who had seen her brilliance. His cold words, "Maybe this marriage isn't for you," she had interpreted as a stressed-out challenge, not a final verdict. She bought the sandwiches from the small deli he used to love, a peace offering, a reminder of their simpler beginnings. She walked into the sterile, intimidating boardroom at Thorne Industries with a hopeful smile. The room went silent. 15 top executives sat around the massive mahogany table, their faces a mask of professional shock. And near Marcus, looking perfectly at home, sat Chloe Van Doren. Eliza stopped, the deli bag crinkling in her suddenly nerveless hand. "I brought lunch," she faltered. Marcus looked at her, his face like stone. "Perfect timing," he said, his voice devoid of any warmth, projecting to every corner of the room. "Everyone, I have an announcement," Marcus said, interrupting her attempt to speak. He looked directly at Eliza, but he was performing for the room. He slid a thick manila envelope across the polished table. It stopped inches from her. "I'm filing for divorce." The words hung in the air, suffocating her. Before she could find her voice, he continued, his tone sharp and decisive. "I want everyone in this room to understand that this marriage was a mistake from the beginning. I was manipulated by someone who saw an opportunity. I will not be taken advantage of by a gold digger any longer." Gold digger. The word hit Eliza like a physical blow. She looked at the staring faces, the averted eyes, and then at Chloe, who was watching her with a look of poorly concealed, triumphant satisfaction. At Marcus's subtle nod, 2 uniformed security guards, clearly prearranged, appeared at her side. They each took an arm. Humiliation burned her cheeks. As the guards escorted her out, the boardroom doors opened to reveal a hallway filled with flashing lights. Paparazzi. Marcus had arranged this too. He wasn't just divorcing her, he was destroying her reputation. Blinded by the flashes, Eliza stumbled, still clutching the useless bag of sandwiches. The divorce was finalized. The prenup was airtight, and Eliza Hayes was left with nothing but a tiny apartment, a broken heart, and a past she couldn't escape. The media narrative Marcus had crafted was brutal and effective. Friends from her old life vanished. Invitations dried up. She spent weeks buried in a depression, so deep she barely left her new, cramped apartment. She would scroll endlessly past news articles, each one a fresh sting. Marcus and Chloe at a restaurant opening, Marcus and Chloe at a charity gala she herself had once planned. "Baby," her mother said during one of many painful phone calls, her voice firm and loving, "a man who would humiliate you like that in front of all those people never loved you the way you deserve to be loved. You remember who you are." Her mother's words, and the slow work of therapy, began to cut through the fog. She started to remember the woman she was before Marcus Thorne. Ava Johnson, MBA from Columbia, literacy advocate, the daughter of hardworking parents. Her value was not determined by the man she married or the penthouse she lived in. She started job hunting. It was harder than she expected. The Thorne name both opened and slammed doors. But eventually she found a position, director of programs, at a small nonprofit focused on educational equity. The pay was a fraction of her old allowance, but the work fed her soul in a way the charity galas never had. She was writing grants, developing programs, making a real difference. For the first time in years, she felt like herself again. It was only then, as her life began to find a new rhythm, that she noticed the other changes. The persistent fatigue, the nausea she had blamed on stress and depression. One morning, she bought a test from the corner drugstore. Eliza sat on the floor of her tiny bathroom, staring at the 2 pink lines on the positive test. She cried, not from sadness, but from the profound, terrifying complication of it all. The timing was impossible. The baby, his baby, had been conceived in the fractured days just before that final, horrible meeting in the boardroom. She places a hand on her still flat stomach and makes a decision. This baby is mine. Not his. Mine. She decides not to tell him. 6 months pregnant and finally feeling happy, Eliza was debating organic apples at the grocery store when she heard the voice that still haunted her nightmares. It was a bright Saturday in October, and the normalcy of the supermarket aisle felt worlds away from her old life. She had just come from a checkup, her son was healthy, and her nonprofit had just secured a major grant. Life was good. Then she heard it. "Eliza." She turned. There he was, standing by the avocados, looking exactly the same in his expensive, casual clothes. Next to him stood Chloe Van Doren, looking annoyed to be in a regular grocery store. For a moment, they just stared. Then Marcus's eyes dropped from her face to her belly, clearly visible under her maternity dress. His face, usually so controlled, went completely, utterly white. Chloe saw it too, her face tightening as she followed his gaze. "When?" Marcus choked out, his mind visibly racing, doing the math. "February," Eliza said simply, her voice calm. It was October. The math was undeniable. This baby wasn't just a baby. It was his baby, conceived in wedlock. The look on Marcus's face was not sadness or regret. It was shock, panic, and a sudden, horrifying calculation. In that instant, Eliza understood everything. She remembered her lawyer's words during the divorce, explaining the obscure clause in the Thorne family trust. She remembered Beatrice's obsession with legacy and heirs. Marcus needed a legitimate heir, born within his marriage, to unlock the hundreds of millions in his family's trust. The man who had publicly called her a gold digger in front of the world now desperately, catastrophically, needed her child to secure his own fortune. Chloe looked like she was going to be sick. "Eliza," Marcus said, taking a step toward her, his voice urgent, desperate. "We need to talk." The irony was overwhelming. The power had shifted, completely and irrevocably. Eliza looks him dead in the eye, the power now entirely hers. "No, we don't," she says, turning away with her apples. "Have a good day." In the quiet aisles of a grocery store, a silent battle was won, not with anger, but with the dignity of a life rebuilt. Eliza's story reminds us that true worth is not what others assign to us in a boardroom, but what we know we carry within ourselves. Like a seed buried in the dark, our value simply waits for the right time to show its strength, often when we are most underestimated. What did you feel in the moment that power finally shifted? We invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. If stories that celebrate resilience and inner strength resonate with your heart, consider following Black Brilliance to connect with more tales of knowing your worth.